anti-apartheid activist and former AZzapo president, Dr. Saths Cooper, joins us tonight to pay tribute to the late Minister Pahad. Dr. Cooper, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Firstly, how did you receive the news of Mr. Pahad's passing this morning?
Well, I was aware that he was quite ill, so it didn't quite come as a surprise. I mean, just over a week ago, his younger brother passed on, and it's a double tragedy for his family. So I think quite a few people who knew him were expecting something like this.
What's the legacy you believe he leaves behind?
You know, I think it's going to be a controversial one. First of all, Essop was a very large man, literally. And he was quite personable, but also very quick to take exception and get quite bellicose. So I always found him engaging, and I could sense when I had touched a raw nerve, but he always managed to overcome himself in his engagements with me. I got to know him soon after the ANC, the PAC, all the Black Consciousness organizations and the SACP were unbanned, and post the conference where President Mandela and the current president Ramaphosa were elected to the top positions. So I got to know him in, of all places, the school where our kids went to. That was Sacred Heart in Observatory, because most of the returnees tended to live in such places. And I would meet with him, Joe Slovo, sometimes Mac Maraj, when they had functions at the school. And while Joe didn't have kids there, he accompanied them to these soirees or whatever events that were held at that school.
A lot has been said about his contribution, especially as a young person in the fight against apartheid, and then later on, of course, being exiled. And in many ways, that sort of comes full circle, where later on in his life, he spent a great deal of his time speaking to young people and really trying to, I suppose, imprint a vision of what the likes of himself had for this country during those years.
There is no doubt that he and his slightly younger brother, Aziz, played very significant roles. They were close friends with former President Mbeki. And the legacy, I think, will be one that's contested. I recall in 1994, in May, after President Mandela was installed as the first president of our country, he announced that Essop would become the premier of the Northwest. But there were talks afterwards, and lo and behold, he declined. And I called him a coward for that, because I felt that, one, we should not have had those kinds of provinces, and now it's come to bear fruit that the provinces are a massive drain. Secondly, it was, and he said to me he opposed 9 provinces. He said he wanted to keep the 4, but others objected in the negotiations. Anyway, the other side of it was the ethnicity, because all these places have been renowned for being hideouts for ethnicity, narrow ethnicity, and almost contestation between one and another area, with some groups feeling they should leave a particular area and be part of another province, or some being rejected. So that part of our history is something that dogs us to this day. And he took that fairly well when I called him account for refusing to go to Mahikeng. But we had various other engagements. He was a very stolid kind of person, as you point out, wanting to reach out to different generations and communities. And in some of that, he was very smart in cajoling many of us to play roles that we otherwise may have been careful in playing. But at the same time, he opened himself to being abused by the Guptas, and that legacy, I think, is something that will stay with us forever, because lasting impressions will be that he introduced the Guptas to government in some ways. So Essop knew that. I engaged with him quite openly on that, and it was a point which he didn't quite want to really acknowledge, but that's part of that history. Otherwise, I think he played important roles. I think he was, as I said, a huge character. In spirit, he was fairly embracing, but sometimes could have an intolerant bent to those he felt he could nudge to another position or downright bully. But he was always personable, and I remember him for that and cherish his contributions to our democracy. It's sad that we've gone downhill in many ways from the time that he played a role.
Dr. Saths Cooper, thank you so much for that very honest reflection on the life and the times of Dr. Essop Pahad.